If you focus on the fact that something is unfair, that something is not your fault, that something sucks, that something is impossible, insurmountable, these words have a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy to them. We should never forget Fortune's habit of behaving exactly as she pleases, Seneca says. And I don't think he meant that she behaves in ways that we always like. I think what he was talking about was the same thing Epictetus talked about, which is that the vast majority of what happens in the world is outside of our control, that the world is largely indifferent to what we want and need. But understanding that doesn't exactly stop you from worrying about it. In fact, it may exacerbate those very worries because so much is outside of our control. It can feel like there's an endless amount of things to be scared about, to be worried about, to be uncertain about. I'm Ryan Holiday. I've written a number of books about Stoic philosophy. I've spoken to the NBA, the NFL, sitting senators, special forces leaders. I also have 2 young children. I have a small business. I have plenty of things that worry me and keep me up at night. Nothing compared, of course, to someone like Marcus Aurelius, who's the emperor of Rome, an empire of 50 million people. He faces floods. He faces wars. He faces a plague, and we know that he struggled with anxiety and worry, like we all do. But thankfully, there was Stoicism there. There was a philosophy he could turn to help him deal with the uncertainty, the unpredictability of life. That's what we're going to talk about in today's episode, Stoic strategies for how to worry less. 3 Stoic one-liners that will help you beat anxiety. Number 1, Epictetus says, it's not things that upset us, it's our opinion about things. It's what we think about them that's upsetting, not the things themselves. Number 2, Seneca says, he who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. He says we suffer more in imagination than in reality. What he means is we anticipate what could happen, what might happen. We torture ourselves about it in advance. That's what anxiety is. And then 3, this is Marcus Aurelius beating anxiety. He writes in Meditations, today I escaped my anxiety. Then he says, wait, no. Actually, I discarded it because it was within me. Things don't make us anxious, as Epictetus was saying. We make ourselves anxious. We have control over it, which means we can solve for it. Stoicism is really, really simple. It's that while we don't control what happens to us, we control how we respond to what happens to us. The Stoics would say, yeah, stuff goes wrong, stuff goes sideways, but we always have this opportunity to practice the 4 virtues: courage, temperance, justice, wisdom. It's not that there's nothing bad in the world, there's nothing frustrating in the world, there's not stuff we wouldn't want to happen. But when it does happen, it is nevertheless an opportunity to step up with courage, to be self-disciplined, to do something for other people, to practice, to learn, to experience wisdom. That's the idea of Stoicism. We don't control what happens, we control how we respond to what happens.
Pema Chadron talks about the babysitters.
Yeah.
These things that we do to distract us from the thinking mind. That's why, one of the reasons why I think meditation, mindfulness is so important, so that you can start to control the thinking mind. So you're not just taken by it. So you can have a process for anxiety or the inner critic or the racing mind, start to calm that environment. Then you don't need these things, these places of refuge that have a cost as much. If you can manage what you focus on, what you pay attention to, if you hone the skill to be able to bypass, things that stress you out or whatever, when you start to manage the mind, then it's all possible.
Yeah.
Productivity, ceasing procrastination, anxiety, insomnia, all these things. And I'm speaking from experience.
How we see things, of course, matters. The way we see things, the story we tell ourselves about things, that's the first and in some ways the most important step. The idea is that the world is objective. There really is no such thing as good or bad. Shakespeare says, neither good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. Events are objective. We tell ourselves what they mean. We make up a story about them. There's no such thing as a bear market or a bull market, good weather or bad weather. There's just weather. There's just the market. Our job as humans is to respond to that. Now, of course, we put names on these things so we have a helpful way of seeing them, but we have to understand that the way we see them and the story we tell ourselves about them determines what we're going to be able to do about them. So if you focus on the fact that something is unfair, that something is not your fault, that something sucks, that something is impossible, insurmountable. These words have a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy to them. So when I was in London, I took like a hour cab ride from Heathrow to Chartwell, which is where Winston Churchill lived. And it was incredible to see this house where he kept that sort of routine of his where he'd feed the goldfish, he'd recite poetry, but you could see where having something out in the country, having a routine, having ritual, having nature, he would go swimming. And then most importantly, you saw the studio where he did his painting. You just realize like the power of hobbies. And he wrote this amazing book called Painting as a Pastime, where he said like the most important thing that a public person can do is have one or two good hobbies. Marcus Aurelius, we know, went boar hunting. Seneca likes to point out all the hobbies that people had. And I mean, for him, it was clearly right. He liked to point out that Socrates liked to play a flute, and he used to like to play games with neighborhood children. Cato liked to drink wine and talk philosophy in the evening. The power of hobbies is immense, and when Seneca talks about how it's easy to fracture an overworked mind, by having a hobby, you work different parts of your mind and then cause like rest through that. So for me, this farm that we're on is a big one. I'm just putzing around. I had a nice work day, and then this is extra. It's good to have something to be responsible for, to think about, but that, forces you to rest your mind. What I'm not doing is sitting at the computer, right? I'm not responding to phone calls. I don't get cell service out here, The emperor of Rome would have had beautiful palaces. Marcus, from a rich family, would have had access to country estates and beautiful houses, and he could afford the finest resorts or retreats. And he reminds himself, though, that people who try to get away from it all are chasing something that doesn't exist. And he would have liked that Buddhist idea that wherever you go, there you are. He says, you can retreat into yourself anytime you want. He says you can find replenishment and rest and relaxation inside your own soul. And I think that's what he's doing in meditations. That's what he's doing in books. That's what he's doing when he would go on walks, when he would look at the world poetically. He realized that he didn't have to flee to some exotic location. All the things he needed and wanted were right there. And they weren't external things at all. They were inside of him, just as they are inside all of us. The secret to improving in life, according to the Stoics, is one thing. It's being okay with being seen as silly or foolish. Epictetus says if you want to improve, be content to be seen as stupid or foolish or ignorant about some things. When I started making these videos, when I started making videos in general, it was so awkward, it was so uncomfortable. But to get better, I had to have reps being bad. Same with writing. When I look at my first published writing, it's so cringeworthy. But you have to be willing to be bad at something to get good at something. You have to be willing to be seen as stupid when you're raising your hand and asking a question to learn the answer. If you're not comfortable being vulnerable, if you're not comfortable putting yourself out there, if you're not comfortable ever being seen as foolish or ignorant or awkward, you're never going to get any better. So the secret to improving is what? It's being seen as not great. In meditation, Marcus Aurelius talks about being the rock that the waves crash over and eventually the raging sea falls still around. That idea of stillness, of being present, of locking in, to me, it's everything. It's happiness. It's also where great work, where that flow state comes from. It's where joy comes from. It's where connection comes from. It's where gratitude comes from. So just lock in, calm down. It doesn't matter what's happening in the outside world. Slow down. Lock in, let the waves crash around you, and eventually everything will quiet down and you will do what you need to do in this very moment. Do you think it wasn't bad when the Stoics were alive? Seneca is there when Nero is emperor. Marcus Aurelius sees the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. So the idea that it wasn't stressful, that it wasn't depressing, the idea that it wasn't alarming or worrying, the things that were happening in the world, none of this is new. This has always been the case. Epictetus says that every situation has two handles. You can despair, or you can say, this is an opportunity. This is a moment in time when I can step up, when I can make a difference, when I can be the change that I want to see in the world. I can not be implicated in the ugliness of the times that I happen to be alive, and I can try to make things better. So that's the choice. Are you going to despair, or are you going to be excited? Are you going to give up, or are you going to keep going?
You're going to do what you need to do.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but Marcus Aurelius' reminder is a life-changing one. He says, you don't need to have an opinion about that. He says, you always have the power of having no opinion. If it's pointless gossip, if it's trivia, if it's something that doesn't concern you, if it's something you have zero control or influence over, just let it be. Don't have an opinion. You don't have to say it's positive or negative. Epictetus says, it's not things that upset us. It's our opinions about those things. It's our judgment about those things. So we have the power to not think about it, to tune it out, to focus on what really matters, to try to put our energy and our intention on where we can make a difference, on where we do have control. And if other people want to be concerned with them, if other people want to be riled up or have opinions about them, if it's their job to do it, leave it to them. Meanwhile, you let it float on by like the clouds and you stick with what's up to you.